The spotlight swept across the hall. A faint crackle from the microphone echoed in the absolute silence. On the massive screen behind the stage, strange symbols carved into an ancient stone slab shimmered under the cold white light. As the final round of applause faded, Dr. William Harper stepped forward to the center of the stage. He smiled, a sharp, self-satisfied smile. His voice rang through the auditorium. "Since all of us have failed to decipher it, why not let the maid's daughter give it a try?" A brief silence, then came a few dry laughs, blending into the murmurs of the neatly dressed scholars. In the corner of the room stood Amara Blake, 17 years old. Wearing a worn-out school uniform, a tray of water glasses in her hands, she froze. For an instant, the stage light caught her face, the light of knowledge, but also of humiliation. She lowered her head slightly, her lashes trembling, then closed her eyes. A deep voice echoed within her, the voice of her great-grandfather. "Elijah, wisdom often hides in the lowest places. You must learn to listen." That memory pulled her back, anchoring the storm of anger rising in her chest. From the front row, another professor leaned toward his colleague and whispered, "Perhaps the girl actually knows something we don't." The spotlight remained fixed on the stage. Harper stood there, smirking, thinking he had just created a bit of amusement. But no one realized, in that very moment, he had unknowingly lit the spark of a quiet rebellion, one that began with the trembling hand of a servant girl. The night before the conference, in a small rented room in the workers' district at the southern edge of the city, Amara Blake sat beside an oil lamp. In front of her lay a pile of old language books and several sheets filled with strange symbols. At 17, she was unlike anyone else in the neighborhood. While other children slept, Amara kept reading, from Old Portuguese to handwritten samples of the Fon script. By day, she followed her mother to the university, helping clean lecture halls and serve drinks for the linguistics conference. Every step the two of them took down those polished corridors felt like crossing an invisible boundary between the scholars and the servants. Rosa, her mother, had worked there as a janitor for 18 years, a small, dignified woman who believed that honest labor was the only way to keep one's head held high. Sometimes, she would glance at her daughter and softly remind her, "Don't let anyone know you understand what they're saying. In this place, knowing too much can be dangerous." But Amara could not stop herself. The echoes of the symbols her great-grandfather, Elijah Moore, once taught her still resonated in her mind. He had been the leader of a small mountain community, a refuge for people of color who had escaped the plantations. Building their own secret language to protect one another, they called it Creole de Run. It was a blend of West African Fon syllables, a few local dialects, and hidden signs passed down through generations. Elijah had taught Amara the old songs, the carved wooden marks, and the coded phrases only their people could understand. He said it was more than a language, it was a map of memory. The voice of a people who had been stripped of their own. On the old television in their room, Rosa watched a promotional news clip about Dr. William Harper, the man who speaks 28 languages. The master of ancient scripts, he stood confidently in a studio, his voice proud and commanding. "There is no language that cannot be conquered." Amara looked at the screen and recognized that smile, the smile of a man who believed knowledge belonged only to those with power. The next morning, the conference began. Experts, reporters, and cameras crowded the hall. When the ancient inscription appeared and Harper failed to read it, he sneered, turning the moment into mockery, calling the maid's daughter onto the stage for entertainment. No one in that grand auditorium realized that the girl they dismissed was holding the key to the very mystery the academic world had been chasing for years. The air inside the hall froze. Harper folded his arms, the corner of his mouth curling. "Come on, little one, let's see what you've got." Amara set down her tray and walked slowly toward the stage. The sound of her shoes against the floor echoed through the silence. Every gaze followed her, a mix of curiosity, doubt, and disdain. She took the microphone, her voice calm yet firm. "I learned this from my great-grandfather." A wave of murmurs rippled through the audience. Someone whispered, "She's just the maid's daughter." But Amara paid no attention. She stared straight at the massive screen displaying the card stone. Her finger pointed at the symbols. "You've been reading this as a form of Old Portuguese, haven't you? But these symbols, they're not letters. They're directional signs, from the language Creole de Run." The hall went completely still. She continued, "This one, which you thought meant mountain, actually means hiding place. And this one, not river, but secret path." She began to translate the first line aloud. "Where the secret path meets the hiding place, the names still remain." The sound was haunting, sacred, almost. An elderly researcher bowed his head, hastily taking notes. Amara opened a worn leather notebook she always carried, its corners frayed, its pages yellowed. "These are the notes of Elijah Moore." He compared these symbols with fawn in a native dialect from the Run River region. Professor Isabel Costa, an expert in African diaspora languages, stood up abruptly, her voice trembling with astonishment. "Let me see that notebook, please." The atmosphere shifted, the arrogance in the room melted away, replaced by reverent silence. Amara raised her head, her voice steady but gentle. "I did not just learn. I studied. I said my research paper. Signed A. Moore, to Dr. Richard Hale at Oxford." The name sent a shock through the audience. That paper, the mysterious A. Moore manuscript, had been whispered about in academic circles as a groundbreaking attempt to decode a forgotten tongue. On Harper's face, the smug smile faded. He finally realized the girl he had mocked was the one who had already walked 3 years ahead of him on the same path toward the truth. The air in the auditorium grew heavier, compressed with tension. Harper stood frozen, his hand tightening at his side. Amara turned the pages of her notebook, her voice lowering, steady and firm. "This is not just a language, it is a coordinate system. Each symbol corresponds to a location, a place that holds the memories of those who once escaped and survived." She connected her laptop and started the slideshow. The screen flared to life, a map appeared, glowing with 12 bright dots scattered across the southern mountain range. "For 3 years, Dr. Richard Hale's team and I have surveyed these 12 sites. Each inscription leads to another, where the people still sing and tell stories in Creole de Run." A wave of murmurs rippled across the hall. Several scholars lowered their heads, trying to recall the name A. Moore. Amara clicked to the next slide, images of the 12 carvings, comparison tables of symbols, and excerpts from emails. One line appeared in bold letters across the screen. From William Harper to Richard Hale. "Need some quick notes for tomorrow's conference. About the Creole symbols you mentioned last year." The entire hall fell silent. Some journalists turned their cameras toward Harper, his face drained of color. Professor Isabel Costa spoke softly, yet her voice carried through the microphone. "You knew about her work and never mentioned her name?" Harper swallowed hard. "I only referenced it. I did not." But Amara was already on the next slide, a clip from an old interview where Harper proudly declared on television that he was the first to decipher the mysterious symbolic language. The image hit the screen. For a long, heavy moment, the only sound was the rapid clicking of cameras. Professor Jorge Mendez rose to his feet, his tone solemn. "We are witnessing an act of intellectual theft and a discrimination that has no place in academia." A journalist streamed it live. Within minutes, audience members' phones began flashing with a new trending hashtag. #Listen to Amara. It spread like wildfire. Amara remained calm, no anger, no gloating. She simply opened the last page of Elijah's notebook, shown the line written in faded brown ink. "As long as someone remembers, our voice still lives." She looked out at the crowd, her voice soft yet resonant. "I do not wish to humiliate anyone. I only want knowledge to be seen for what it truly is. My great-grandfather once said, 'Language is the soul, and the soul has no color.'" The audience rose to their feet. A few people clapped, then more, until the applause rolled like thunder through the hall. Harper stood motionless, avoiding the lights of the cameras. For the first time, the man who once stood at the summit of prestige felt small on his own stage. Only one day after the conference, the news exploded across headlines. renowned professor accused of stealing a 17-year-old girl's research. The university's ethics council held an emergency meeting. Harper was suspended that very morning, while television programs canceled his interviews one after another. The last footage of him on screen showed a silent man packing his papers, his eyes hollow. Across the city, Amara and her mother were invited to a special meeting. On the table lay a letter sealed with the red crest of the University of Oxford. Dr. Richard Hale's voice came through a video call, warm and proud. "Your work deserves full recognition. Oxford is honored to offer you a full scholarship and a position in our Creole de Run language preservation project." Rosa gripped her daughter's hand tightly. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not of pity, but of pride. 18 years of scrubbing floors and washing the robes of arrogant professors had finally led to this moment, her daughter standing where true knowledge belonged. It did not stop there. The government announced the founding of the Run Cultural Center, a program dedicated to preserving the language and memories of the community, with Amara as its advisor. Rosa was appointed as coordinator. For the first time, she signed a contract not as a cleaner, but as a manager. That afternoon, on the university courtyard, Amara met Harper again. The TV cameras captured the scene. She approached him with a gentle smile. No anger in her eyes. "Do you still need my help now, Doctor?" Harper lowered his head, silent. The question was not meant to humiliate, it was meant to close a chapter. A voiceover rose against a soft orchestral score. Amara did not win through revenge. She'd triumphed through truth and through her belief that knowledge belongs to everyone, no matter where they come from or what color their skin may be. The final scene, an airplane ascending into the sunset. From the window, Amara gazed down at the shrinking city below. At the foot of the boarding stairs, Rosa waved, her smile radiant in the fading light. 6 months later, at the newly built Run Cultural Center by the banks of the Run River, the first sounds of the Creole de Run language echoed again after centuries of silence. In a small classroom, children giggled as they sang the ancient songs Amara once learned from her great-grandfather. Elijah, on the walls hung replicas of the carvings, each carefully annotated. An elder from the community spoke in a resonant tone. "This language once saved our ancestors' lives. Today, it is saving the souls of the young." Amara, now a young advisor for the Voices of the Run program, stood by the window. Behind her were cameras, journalists, and a new sign that read, "Run Cultural Center, company founded by Amara Blake." The story spread worldwide. A global documentary studio began negotiations to adapt her journey for film. Schools across the region started adding lessons about local linguistic heritage to their curriculums. As for Rosa, now the center's manager, she smiled during a local TV interview and said, "I once scrubbed the floors where people spoke of knowledge. Now, I hold the key to that very room." In an international interview, Amara spoke slowly, her voice filled with conviction. "I only want languages like ours to be heard, recorded, and respected." She turned to the whiteboard and wrote in bold letters, "Knowledge has no color." Her voice carried warmth and hope. If you believe that knowledge has no color, share this story. Subscribe to follow Amara's next journey. And comment below if you know a local language that deserves to be preserved. Every voice, no matter how small, deserves to be heard.